I remember very early on, I came to you once maybe it was after the first person or the second person after me, and we had these incredible results. Here I'm, with the team, with Dr. Porter, with Nancy Salzman, we're just ecstatic, and I came to you and I was sharing some of the things that happened. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I was super ecstatic about the possibilities and look what's happening. And the thing that you said in response, and I don't know if you remember this or correct me, but you said, the thing that I'm most concerned with is the hate that the other people with Tourette's are going to experience because of what we're doing. And that was a big moment for me, because here, we had just, in front of our eyes, with the work of what Nancy Salzman was able to do with these people, it's almost as if you're watching somebody for 10 years be in a wheelchair and then watch them walk, in a matter of a day. And so I'm going off that excitement. But that was what you responded to whatever I was sharing with you. And I want to know if you could elaborate on that whole thing.
For me, understanding the nature of tools is a very important philosophical thing. And understanding the nature of power and the abuse of power and the wielding of power in a responsible manner. So here we find, and we do believe, we have a pretty sharp tool. Of course, maybe not, but let's take for a second, assume that we do. Assume that this tool is very sharp and very unique. The wielding of that tool is not to be taken lightly. It's not like, I just discovered the sharpest knife in the world, I'm going to just run around waving it in the air. We do have in our curriculum something about the release of it. If you found the ultimate, what we call the replicator, which is this from Star Trek, if you found a little box where you could replicate any item just by command, what would you do with it? If you had the blueprint for that, you had devised it in your garage, it worked perfectly. If you deploy that haphazardly, literally you could crash the economy of the world. You could do things that were awful. So really the ethical, moral question is, how do you deploy that wonderful tool?
Even if you have good intent.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the best of intent can often lead to disastrous results. And, the last round table I did, I was talking about an example of the king in a kingdom. And the king wants to be a compassionate king, a humanitarian king, has a bunch of peasants that live on his land and work his land, and they give him a certain amount of, their crop as like a tax, but they live very prosperous lives in general. One winter he notices that in the middle of the winter, many of them don't have the ability to store their crop, so they have hard times. Some of them die, they starve, things like that. They clearly have enough crops when they harvest the crops, but they just can't store them. So he doesn't want another winter to go by like that. It pains him to see these people, his subjects, so to speak, starving. So that spring he decides immediately, we must build a facility to store all the food for everyone. And I'm going to hire the people in my kingdom, and because they need money, I'm going to pay them more than they would in their normal job. I'll pay them 3 times the amount of their normal job, so everyone will have more money. I'll be a little poorer, doesn't matter, because the kingdom's going to be better, and we're going to build this great facility. So, first thaw, he gets all of them, and they build this wonderful facility because harvest time in September is coming, and they want to be able to harvest all the food and store it. And it takes them all summer, and they build this beautiful facility. September comes around, and no one planted any crops. He hired the people away and didn't realize that there are other things that needed to be done. So he was disturbing his own ecosystem, well-intended, built something wonderfully, but in the interim, that winter was going to be a terrible winter because no one had any food. Those sort of misdirections of good intent can cause a lot of problems. So here you have let's assume for a second that we do have this sharp, unique tool that really works to transform the lives of people with Tourette's. And we have, in our particular organization, a few people that can wield that tool. So we can take care of a limited number of people. What happens when we start to release that tool and it becomes publicly known? You have all these people that are suffering from this syndrome, it's whatever it is, but the manifestation of it is this social problem. It brings much great prejudice, it brings at times violence, people get kicked off of buses, people get beaten up, all of this sort of a thing. And if the world believes that this could be cured just by talking to someone, they're going to say, oh, you have that Tourette's thing? Yeah, you're a liar. It's going to be worse. And then all the people with Tourette's who might be too scared to go into this methodology, or may have lived with Tourette's so long that the fear of not having Tourette's is more than the fear of keeping it. Even in some scriptures, in like ancient yogic scriptures, they talk about even people who've been become highly self-aware and liberated. They're like a bird in a cage. You have a bird that lives in a cage for 30 years, and when the door is finally thrown open, the bird is reluctant to leave. The security, the familiarity, the patterns of the cage. So even the liberated soul may have reluctance in, leaving the body or things like that. So here you have people who have dealt with Tourette's, families that have dealt with Tourette's, and some of them, when you have a child that undergoes all sorts of problems like that, I imagine it must be terrible to see your child tortured. And you must also worry if you're to blame. And a lot of people are in the blame model, where someone has to be to blame. And if somehow that disease or that condition that your child has is seen as being a fake condition because someone can talk it away, imagine what would happen to your child. Imagine how you would feel. Imagine how defensive, imagine how you might feel towards that treatment. Because this treatment isn't some profound operation, that it's literally, you sit down and you have conversations with people and it changes because our methodology is conversational in nature. That's scary what it could do, how it could just be a hate magnet for those that have this condition. We don't want that. We know well that that's a possibility. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to help those that we can help, assuming that we have this sharp tool that works? How can we help them? How can we deal with all the fear that people have because of all the prejudice that this condition has attracted? And not only with those that we help, but the ones that, for whatever reason, aren't coming along. Is that going to increase the prejudice to them? Because, well, yeah, we understand now your condition, you have Tourette's, you could just go and talk to someone and that'll go away. Why haven't you? Here you have someone who's been living with the condition and has deep fear and deep life patterns. And they want to get rid of the condition, but they're so scared, which happens. It's like, no matter how much you convince a little kid that jumping off the high diving board will be fine, they could still sit on the edge there and maybe never even jump off the high dive. They could see everyone else do it, but sometimes that fear is too much. So you have all these people that have this condition, and I imagine a good number of cases, the fear is just too much, and we're just going to hurt them if we don't do this respectfully. So are we saying that, no, they don't have a condition? Absolutely not. Are we saying that, oh, this could just be talked away? No, we have a very unique, specific methodology to do this. This isn't just a conversation. And people who undergo, on an ongoing basis, and we've had other conditions we've worked with, and we've had some pretty incredible success using these same tools, but outsiders who watch it happen don't get what's going on and they think it's just a conversation. It's not just a conversation. You know, we ask questions, but it's the questions that we ask. It's the methodology that allows us to formulate the questions that move things in a certain direction. And I used to say, you know, we don't tell people what to think. We give them tools how to think. But I like to talk about our courses as a course of questions. We ask good questions. And this prejudice is of real concern. I've had some prejudice in my life. I've met people who've had tremendous prejudice in their life, tremendous adversity, tremendous hate. With any innovation, there's so much fear in the world. Innovations do bring hate. I welcome skepticism. I'm very sad about hate.
Yes. We are doing good, and there are effects. I just know that moment, I didn't know you that well before the Tourette's project started, but I had heard so many things about you. I had heard that you were very compassionate, you were a humanitarian, all these things. But I think it was in that moment it really came to life. And, you know, even though we were, you know, this happened, and then it's like, oh my God, we could go save the world, which may or may not be true.
I know the feeling.
That was the first thing that you said to me. So thank you for elaborating on that.